Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
Yes, he will.
My name is Tomcat, and I am joined by my ever-lovely co-host.
Co-host or co-hosted? Sometimes co-hosted.
Sometimes both.
Sometimes both. All in one. Toni Homeperm.
And today we are going over the episode Love and Marriage, which originally aired October 24th, 1972.
And every time I hear that, all I can think is, Married with Children.
The Frank Sinatra song, yeah.
Can't do that too much. We'll be demonetized, even though we're not monetized.
Not yet, you know. You never know when the smoke will blow our way.
I know, so.
And what a really fabulous episode this was, and it really showed Adrienne Barbeau's acting chops.
Yes, it did.
We definitely saw her range as an actress, and I was very happy with the episode overall. Mm-hmm. We are going to preface this by saying that spousal abuse does not equal love.
No.
And we'll get to why we bring that up towards the end of the episode.
Unless they haven't styled your wig properly. And then all bets are off, I'm sorry.
Unless my wig isn't styled properly.
Unless my wig is styled incorrectly, then, hell hath no fury.
Hell hath no fury like a drag queen scorn.
You got it.
So, the episode starts with Walter coming home, very happy to be home in his house.
How little he knew.
Wait, it gets
Poor
better,
Walter.
kids. Poor Walter. So, he's calling out to Maude. Florida is not home, and it's just the two of them. And Maude
comes out of the kitchen.
Ready to start World War III.
Ready to rumble.
And all of the dialogue between the two of them, all leading to just Maude not being touched in 4 days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just some of the. I didn't write down any of the dialogue between the two of them. I hope you did.
Well, she was accusing Walt. He's saying like you're still angry. And she was accusing him of starting the fight.
It's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
That's definitely a recurring theme between the two of them, where Walter doesn't know what he did wrong.
Yeah, he doesn't even remember what the fight was about.
Exactly what it was all about.
Exactly. The woman never forgets.
Or
a drag queen.
Drag queens, a drag queen never forgets.
Yeah. See, I can forgive...
But we never forget.
I think that also comes from being Italian and Jewish.
Yes.
We'll forgive, but we never forget.
So, the episode does continue. Carol enters.
Yes.
Carol
comes in, limping.
Carol is limping because earlier, while Carol was on the hunt for a job, because at this point, Carol is jobless, she only has Philip, so she's just, she's doing what a lot of millennials are doing today, where they're unemployed, living at home, with or without their child.
Right. But now Carol's problem, which if her problem were happening to somebody today, they would have
a lot of lawsuits.
Because as she said, she's going on these interviews, and basically all these potential employers just want to sleep with her.
Yeah.
And she actually had to quit the job she was at because she wouldn't supply in the supply room. So you have to,
and it really is a sign of the times.
Yes,
that much is a sign of the times, because if that ever were to happen today, like there would just be lawsuits up the wazoo. Look at Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah,
everything that's coming out against him, the Me Too movement.
Yeah,
and all stem from someplace.
Yeah. Now the thing is, it still is happening.
It's still very. It's
not that it's not happening. It's not that it's not happening.
I mean, one of the phrases that I use pretty frequently is, just because you think it isn't happening doesn't mean it isn't.
Exactly.
And, it's part and parcel of the game, really. You will have these attractive women, and men just don't know how to control their widow feelings.
Yeah,
I hate men. Anyway, Carol is beside herself. She goes to these job interviews, and immediately the men will turn the portraits of their family down just so that he can have a conversation with this very attractive young woman. And it really kind of breaks your heart because obviously this woman, Carol Trainer, is a very smart, very astute woman. They never really go too much into her education, but she is a learned person.
Yeah.
And she's capable. So
have you ever had an experience like that of, a potential job and there was,
I'm too hairy.
Okay, because
I'm too hairy and too tall.
It actually did happen to me. When I was very young, I was in art school.
It's because you're short.
I know, but well, first of all, it was this woman. So already
that's already strike one.
It was already strike one. But yeah, she had contacted me about doing some sort of artwork, but wanted me to come into the city and meet her at her apartment, and I was just like, this sounds bizarre, and I was just like,
no, please continue.
And I just was, and I was like, no, I don't think, and I was just like, you know what, I'm really just too busy with school, but thank you anyway. And the person got really annoyed about it, and I was just like, I said, something in my gut
go with your gut.
Told me it wasn't a good idea, and sure enough, it wasn't. It was not.
It's not a good idea.
It was not a good idea.
Ill-advised.
Glad that I said no, thank you.
I don't think there's ever been an instance where a superior has ever treated me in such a way, but there have been customers that have treated me in such a way where they will just, objectify me because I cannot tell you the amount of people, oh, you're so tall. Oh, you're so this. Oh, you're so that. And I'm like, honey, we're not playing for the same team. Just keep it go. Keep it walking. Keep it walking. Let it go. Keep it walking, Fester.
Let it go. Let it go.
But to get back to the reason why Carol is limping, she was chased.
Yes.
She was chased by... there will be sometimes when we're watching an episode and they'll completely and totally cut out an important bit of dialogue, which happens when in syndication they'll just cut the episode shorter.
Yeah.
I, however, know these things because I watch.
As she hair flips.
As she hair flips. But Carol was chased by a mugger who was really interested. Just what you would usually see on the streets of New York. You'll see the guys sitting on their stoops and they'll be whistling or catcalling to girls as they walk past. It's just sometimes you'll get men who are a little bit more adventurous and stupid and will try to chase after somebody if they are physically attracted to a woman who will not accept their advances. And unfortunately, Carol ended up breaking a heel in the process.
Oh, boy.
And I cannot imagine what that's like. I will say this, however. There was one time when I was walking around the streets of Baltimore in booty shorts. They were literally booty shorts. I was in black patent leather ankle boots that were about 4 inches high, 5 inches high. And I had my breasts on. I had my hair done up. It was all in curls. And it was for a convention. And I was walking around with a group of friends.
Right.
We were all cosplaying from American Horror Story Freak Show. And I was I was Amazon Eve.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, anecdotal, when my friend showed pictures of myself as Amazon Eve to the actress who played Amazon Eve, she broke out in happy tears.
Aww.
Because so many people, when they dress up as Amazon Eve, they did it at the time offensively.
Yeah.
And the way I did it was I was appreciating the character, and I was also... and still am very tall.
Right.
But she appreciated that. Anyway.
That's nice.
We're walking to the carousel in Baltimore, and we're passing these, group. I'm saying, 6 or 7 older gentlemen. And they're, blowing kisses and, whistling, and I'm like, I am terrified. Here I am, this 6'5", and in heels, no less. I'm about, 6'9", 6'10", being catcalled at, and I'm just like, this is wildly uncomfortable. I don't know how girls go through it every day.
Why do straight men do that to women?
Because they feel they can get away with it. They feel they can get away with it. That's exactly it.
I mean, what is the thought process? Is it like, oh, I'm gonna whistle and catcall at this woman, and they're gonna come over to me and say, oh, thank you, I'm gonna sleep with you now. What is...
Men feel entitled. That's the problem. It's entitlement. It's all entitlement. Men feel that they are entitled to a woman's body because that's what God told them. Okay. Because women were put on this earth to be baby makers, and that's the bottom line. And it's just so wrong. It's so wrong that men have this idea in their head where it's like, no, you will find me physically attractive. You will find me.
Well, it's a misguided learned behavior.
Yeah, it's a misguided learned behavior that they were taught when they were younger.
Yeah, because I was not brought up, to think that was okay.
Well, you were also raised by people who knew better.
Well, my mother. My mother. And, my mother, like, would, she didn't put up with, anything like that. So there was no way I would have ever, like... Well, first of all, knowing I was gay from, like, kindergarten, there's, had no interest in, hooting and catcalling at a pretty girl. Might have wanted her purse and her heels.
I may have wanted to be your best friend, but that was where the buck stopped.
But that was it. Would have loved to play Barbies with her. Or tea party.
Aw, tea parties. But no slumber parties.
No.
But I mean, the two of us were raised in a very similar fashion where we were raised to respect women. We were not raised to treat women as objects.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that there are a number of men who were raised to treat women as objects. Yeah. And who are still trained and raised to treat women as objects. And that's why we have the Me Too movement. That's why we have these sort of pillars in the community where it's just like, no, you're not. You're not owed anything. Some of my favorite memes are like ones where I think one I'm gonna describe it horribly, but it's a man getting angry at some woman for not whatchamacallit, for not oh God, I literally just said it earlier, for not accepting his advances. Oh. And then an angel comes down from the sky and hands him this note that says, women don't owe you shit.
Right.
And women don't owe men a bloody thing.
No.
So...
And by extension, nobody owes anybody anything.
It's very true. It's very true.
Because even in the gay community, there is
there's a hierarchy
quite often with sexual exploitation. So I mean, it occurs.
The problem is it occurs in all communities.
True.
It happens everywhere, and respect is earned, not given.
Right.
Respect is earned, not given. And yes. I feel like men need to... I feel like people, not just men specifically. I just have a problem with men.
And I've always felt like, why would you want to be with somebody that didn't want to be with you?
Yeah. I mean, you would think that would be common sense. Like, okay, they don't want to be with me, so all right, let's move on. Let's be humans.
I mean, I of course, you and I, we see a handsome guy, and of course, we're gonna.
We can lust.
We can look. We can say, lust. Wow, that guy's really handsome. But it's like
there was a guy actually out for a run. And I was just like, oh, very attractive. Just I know it would not end in matrimony. It would not end the way we all think we would like it to.
He's not asking for your hand.
Well, not even asking for a courtship. None of that.
Your dowry probably isn't large enough.
Dowry. How far back do we want to go, Blanche? Do you still want to be able to vote? So,
oh my goodness.
That's our feelings on the subject. Yes. The episode does continue, and Carol is again just beside herself, and Carol's in this sort of like not woe is me, not woe is me situation, because she's not right. She's not prattling on like I'm the world's saddest case. No, she's just experiencing a hardship, and she's looking to her mother and her stepfather for comfort. And in doing so, Maude treats Carol like a toddler, like a baby, not like an adult woman. Mm-hmm. And Carol retaliates. I think the line was...
well, Carol is saying she wants a drink, and
Carol wants a drink, and you can have Mommy's drink.
She's like, no, I don't want Mommy's drink. I want Carol's drink.
And then as Carol, limps away, Maude goes, Carol, could you please do something about that limp? And again, Carol she's at her breaking point at that point. She takes her heels off, throws them down, and then walks upstairs to her child, who was in a fight.
Right.
Which again caused Carol to just another layer on the crap cake.
Yes. But Carol stops. She doesn't go all the way up.
She does not go all the way up.
She has to make an announcement.
She says to Maude and Walter, "I'm getting married." She announces that she's getting proposed. That she is already the wheels are in motion.
Yeah,
the wheels are in motion.
By the way,
I'm getting married. And as she walks upstairs, Maude once again goes on to herself.
Yes.
She turns to Walter and goes, "Walter, what did Carol just say?
Yeah, what did she say?
She said she's going to get married, Maude. No, but before when she was at the top of the stairs. No, Maude, she's going to get married." And Maude, in true to form fashion, just goes ballistic.
Yes.
Because Maude already knows that what Carol is doing is not out of love, it is out of convenience. And, Maude the way that Maude was written, she was a very astute, intelligent, brassy woman, but sometimes she would be a little fly off the handle.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the time she would fly off the handle. And this time was no exception. She's carrying on, saying, how could a daughter not tell her mother this? What is a mother if not her daughter's best friend? Just
it's so funny because Maude so desperately wants Carol to always see her as her best friend, and Carol really just wants Maude to be her mother. She doesn't want her to be her best friend. She doesn't need her to be her best friend. She just wants her just be her mother. But Maude that's that whole 70s very touchy feeling, get in touch with your emotions. She wants to be that kind of a that was very big in the 70s.
Really?
About, people having to get in touch with their emotions, sort of breaking away from that very sterile, 50s kind of regimentation. It came out of the whole, the hippie movement and all that. That's where you started seeing, people, having their kids, that the kids would call the parents by, the first name. We saw that. I remember seeing that a little bit. And one time I said to my mother, I said, "Can I call you Yvonne?" And she's like, "No, you'll call me Mom."
I remember the first time I called my mother Donna, and she was just, the look that if looks could kill.
Right.
Oh, if looks could kill, I was like, "I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I called you that." And even today, I don't call my mother by her first name. I don't call my father by his first name, unless I'm being a smartass.
So that must be quite often.
Too often, in fact. No, but it's a sign of that's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
But during the 70s, that was sort of the norm, where you would have these children would have these relationships with their parents that were very casual, very much
it was a lot of pop psychology stuff, you have to be your child's best friend, and
Dr. Spock.
Yeah, and it was a little
aggressive,
too much.
But then again, so is Maude.
Oh yeah,
Maude is also a little too much sometimes.
Sometimes, definitely when it came to Carol.
Very much so. But I think we've addressed in earlier episodes that the relationship between Carol and Maude, while sometimes toxic, there's a reason behind that. Because obviously something had to have happened to Carol that led Maude to be this very overprotective, overbearing figure.
Right.
With that said, there was something that was mentioned that really took me out of it for a second. Chester is not Carol's father. Barney is Carol's father.
They kept messing that up.
That's a continuity error.
Yeah.
That's definitely a continuity error because because again, it was the first season. They were still trying to figure out how many husbands Maude had, what the names of the husbands were.
Right.
And
which was alive.
Which one was dead. Just very, very, very... It's very confusing as a writer to sort of like have these bits of information on hand so you don't make the mistake later on.
Right. You would think there would have been like a Bible for the series. No, really.
I get that.
Like a Bible saying like, Maude Findlay and, she, first husband, so-and-so, second husband, this one, third, this one was Carol's father. Just so that, when they, if anybody needs to refer to it.
I mean, I feel like that's easier to do today.
Yeah.
I would probably say it'd be a little challenging to do that years ago.
Yeah, all they had to do was type it up.
True. You're right.
They just had to type it up, and be like, well, if you're gonna write an episode, here's the Bible.
True.
You get a copy. So lazy.
Yeah,
laziness.
I mean, it is lazy writing.
Like
sometimes.
making a dress poorly. But I digress.
But we digress.
Yes.
But yeah, Barney was Carol's father. Chester was going to be her adopted stepfather, but that's a story for later when we actually get to meet Chester. So the episode continues, and I'm trying to think where we're at.
Carol comes back down.
That's right. Carol comes back downstairs,
and Maude is going ballistic, of course, and Carol. And she's saying, like, who is this? Who is this person?
I think my favorite line was when Maude asks, Carol, did you say that you were getting married? And Carol goes, yes, Mother, I am. And then Maude goes, see? Mother's hearing is still 2020.
Yeah.
I also loved when Maude would call herself Mother.
Yes.
That always tickled me. But yes. Carol, knowing her mother, is immediately like saying, this is what you're going to say, this is how you're going to act, why am I going to bother telling you when I already know how you're going to react to things? And again, it's just sort of that mother-daughter relationship where they both know, it's just emotions get involved.
Right.
But finally, Carol announces, I'm marrying George Snyder. Who was played by Frank A. Letter. And Maude immediately jumps to conclusions, but then stops herself and says, wait, no, I like George Snyder.
Like, yeah, I like him.
So Maude immediately says, her fears are allayed. Her daughter is marrying somebody that not only Maude respects, but also whom Carol respects.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember, I think... They've known each other for 2 years. So Carol and George previously knew each other for 2 years. But Carol never told George.
Oh, right. George, the doorbell rings.
The doorbell rings.
And Carol's like, it's George. Now, by the way, George doesn't know about the wedding, about the marriage.
Hey, don't tell him. Don't tell him anything. Don't mention anything because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Which ballsy move on her part.
Yeah, very.
Like, very ballsy move on her part. And,
yeah.
Like, at that point, it wasn't common for women to propose.
No, not at all.
It was not common for women to propose. But yeah, so Maude is like, wait, what?
Right.
Completely and totally blindsided.
Yes.
And Walter, I feel like this was one of the episodes where Walter was like trying to use a little bit more logic. He was trying to be respectful and understanding, but still his usual oafish self.
Yes.
But there were some things that he said that were like really, really, really poignant. And of course, Maude, in true to form fashion, just completely and totally ignored it or shot it down.
Well, of course.
Shot it down as fast as it was up.
Of course. So George comes in, and, now Maude wants to talk to Carol, because Carol's revealed to her that George doesn't know that they're getting married.
Which leads Maude to understand that it's probably not a marriage of love, but a marriage of convenience.
Convenience. Yes. And that's when she brings up Chester.
That's when Maude brings up Chester.
Brings up Chester because she's saying something about Walter and I haven't raised you for 27 years and yada yada.
For 27 standing years, I've been your mother, and I know what's best. And I think she did mention how Walter and herself had Carol.
Yes,
and when Walter was like,
"Whoa,
no,
I'm not," because he wasn't Carol's father.
But I also appreciated when they made that joke.
Mm-hmm.
I always appreciate when they made that joke because it was like, no, Maude, no. We know you've had 4 husbands,
right.
but Walter is not Carol's father.
He's not Carol's father.
And neither is Chester.
Right.
Again, just lazy.
And Walter has to he has to do a Maude kitchen. And
I always appreciated when he did that.
It's like whatever. It was either a Maude kitchen or a
Maude sit. Maude stand,
yes.
Maude do X, Y, and Z.
It was sort of like when she knew when Walter got to that point, she'd gone too far. She poked the bear too much. Right. So they go in the kitchen,
mm-hmm.
and that's when Carol has her talk
with George. And they're having a very adult conversation.
Yes.
When Carol just suddenly blurps it out, George, will you marry me?
Mm-hmm.
And George he's completely and totally taken aback because as much as he's wanted it,
right,
he knows. I think that George knew that something was up,
right?
Because even Carol was like, "Listen, there's a stipulation,
right?
There's something that we need to address here,
right?"
And George, of course, was very beside himself, like, "Oh my God, I've wanted this for so long. This is so wonderful. Yes, I accept." But then Carol was like, "No, we have to address. There's a bit of an elephant in the room." And he goes, "Well, what is it? You don't love me?" And Carol was like, "Wait, how did you know?"
Yeah.
And again, if you're friends with somebody for 2 years and you're courting each other and the relationship is good and the feelings are right, you're obviously going to know if there's a love connection or if there's just a friends connection. And George, I guess, was aware that it was
he was in what we would call the friend zone.
That he was in what we would call the friend zone.
Yes.
And again, Carol was taken aback by that statement as well because it was like, wait, you knew?
You know, right? Yeah.
And
meanwhile, now Maude and Walter are in the kitchen. Maude is lamenting because she knows
she's bereft.
Carol wants to enter into a loveless marriage.
Yeah. Have you ever had any friends who were in loveless marriages?
I think I know people that, it became a loveless marriage.
Yeah.
So.
Because, most of my friends I know today, they're in very happy marriages and very happy relationships with people whom they love, trust, and adore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a marriage of convenience. It's not a marriage of luxury. It's a marriage of affection and adoration.
Now, of course, I have also seen in the gay community quite a few marriages where,
open marriages.
They're open. And,
I see a lot of open marriages. That I definitely saw. I've seen more open relationships and polyamorous relationships today
mm-hmm.
than I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
Than I've ever seen before. And I personally am grateful and I'm happy that these people are able to experience love in more than one way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not for me.
No, me either. I'm like, you know what?
Just not for
one husband drives me crazy enough. I can't imagine 2 husbands driving me crazy. So, therefore, for me, it's a pass. It's a pass for me.
Speaking of bigamy and polygamy,
yes.
Which is a very negative, nasty thing to say about polyamory because polyamory is about love, and polygamy is about marriage of just marrying multiple people.
Right.
Frank A. Letter played Harry in The Golden Girls.
The pilot episode.
The pilot episode where, as a matter of fact, who played Anthony in Designing Women?
Oh, Meshach Taylor.
Meshach Taylor comes to tell the girls that Harry was arrested. That's the Harry that we're talking about.
Yes.
And again, we were looking up Frank A. Letter's history, and he has a storied history.
He was in everything in the 70s.
Everything.
$6 million man. Marcus Welby.
Falcon Crest, Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, yes. He was in
everything.
So
everything. Good for him.
When you see him, you're into
you immediately have a moment where it's like, I know
him, but I don't know.
Why do I know him?
But I don't remember what I've seen him in.
And I think that this was the only episode where George was featured.
Yes, according to IMDb, he was just in this one episode.
He was just in this one episode.
And that was it.
So the episode continues, and Walter turns to Maude and says, well, wait a minute. Engagements are broken off in a matter of... They could be broken off.
Right. They could go on for years.
Or they can be broken off in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And
Maude is just, wow, what a brilliant, brilliant thing to say.
Yeah.
And she turns to Walter and goes, you're an absolute... Carol enters. Again, beautifully, beautifully edited. Perfect timing. And says, me and George are going to marry each other.
We're getting married tonight.
And she calls him an ass. An absolute ass. I don't think you were allowed to say ass on national television years ago.
Not really. That was probably one of the prohibited words.
Yeah. I don't think you were allowed to say it. So the fact that she was able to... There were a couple of moments where Maude would say something and she would get away with it.
Uh-huh. And
especially because the audience roared over the rest of the line, I think definitely helped matters.
Yeah. So Carol goes, goes into her room.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, that was...
Yeah, this was the one and only time where we get to see Carol's room, which was, again, very, very 70s.
Yeah.
The wallpaper was hideous. Wallpaper was absolutely garish. But yeah, Maude enters, and the two of them have their sort of mother-daughter time, where Carol pretty much says to Maude, this is what I need to do for me.
Well, Carol gives her 5 minutes.
5 minutes, and then Maude said, I actually have it written down, 5 minutes, am I done? What am I, an egg? And, the two of them have a very adult conversation.
Yes. And Carol points out that she says, love is a luxury.
I can't afford. Love is a luxury I cannot afford.
It's a very sad thing.
Very sad
to hear somebody say that.
Especially a 27-year-old girl.
Yes, which is Maude's point. That she feels that Carol is selling herself short. That she's giving up too easily.
Yeah. It was a very intelligently written episode.
Yeah.
Very smartly written. So Maude is trying to sort of do this balancing act between being a mother and being a responsible adult and also being a good friend to Carol and not immediately saying the wrong thing or just saying something with the wrong inflection. Because there's always times when B. Arthur was delivering a line and it was very in your face.
Yes.
And very loud and very shrill.
Yes.
But it ends up that Carol just says, your 5 minutes are up. I don't want to hear anymore.
Right.
And Maude goes on her way. She does relent. And she says, and Carol, don't worry if it ends up not working out. I won't be one of those mothers that says, I told you so. But remember, you heard it here first.
Yeah. She's not going to tell you that I told you so, but...
But she will.
She will.
She still
find
will.
a way. Now that's when we get to the big kitchen scene.
Actually, I want to point out one thing. In the conversation between Maude and Carol, Carol ends up saying, Philip needs a father and I'm tired of sleeping alone.
Yeah.
Again, another very sad thing for a 27-year-old woman, especially, and again, not to point out the obvious reason as to why Adrienne Barbeau was hired, but Adrienne Barbeau was a very attractive woman.
Yeah.
And
she was a sex symbol.
Exactly. And Carol, as a character, was written to be an attractive character. Mm-hmm. And I think earlier in the episode, Maude actually apologized to her.
Yes. But all of Carol's problems with the men chasing her
all stem because of Maude.
Right.
And because Maude says, you're really stacked. It's my fault you're stacked. So the episode continues. and we come to probably one of the biggest fight scenes between Maude and Walter in the series. They've had big quarrels, but they've never had quarrels that ended in such a mess. And it really comes to a head when Walter says, "Give me my dinner.
Right.
Cater to me.
Right.
I'm the man. I'm tired of hearing your problems, Maude.
Tired of hearing about Carol.
I've done all I can to be supportive and be understanding," which, to his credit, he's right. Walter has been listening to Maude just go on and on about her problems and Carol and this and that, but no one's listening to poor Walter.
Right.
So Walter immediately just goes on the defensive, and you can't go on the defensive when having a conversation with Maude. It won't end well for anybody.
Will not end well.
So Maude immediately says, "You're right. I understand. I completely and totally get where you're coming from." She grabs the dinner and slams it on the table in a fit of anger. And Walter did not like that all that much. He takes the crockery filled with dinner and smashes it on the floor. Now, again, when we started this episode, we prefaced by saying spousal abuse does not equal love.
Right.
This is one of those instances where we could potentially consider everything that they're doing to be considered domestic abuse. Like, this is something that the neighbors would call the police.
Yeah.
Like, they are smashing, throwing, breaking china and crockery and Walter's favorite coffee mug.
Right.
And
the plates,
all the china.
Maude gets the dessert out of the refrigerator.
Maude ends up getting the dessert out of the refrigerator, smashing that on the floor.
Yes.
And, while all of this is happening, Carol is packing to get ready to leave because her and George are getting married tonight. And she comes downstairs and immediately heads to where the fight is happening.
And the doorbell rings.
And then the doorbell rings, so her focus is taken back to the door. She lets George in, and George is just...
he's taken aback.
Shook.
Because
he is shook by...
World War III is going on in the kitchen.
Yep. And it's... Again,
by the way, in the 70s, like, we were saying, like, it's like, domestic abuse, spousal abuse. But now in the 70s, police wouldn't care.
No, they wouldn't
have
care.
done anything.
They wouldn't show up.
Back then, domestic abuse,
domestic disputes were just
domestic. It was like, they can't get involved. So, but it's
nice to know that some things change.
A lot has changed.
Some things.
I just recently there was Stephen Amell, who played Green Arrow on the CW. It just happened a couple days ago. He was in the airport, and he and his wife, he was just yelling at her, apparently, loudly, and, like, security was called. I don't know, I'm not sure if he might have been arrested, but it was a big,
big to-do.
It was a big thing, and it's like, shows you how much things have changed. There was no report, I didn't read anything about him being violent or
they're
touching or anything like that, but just the yelling was enough for security to be called.
Yeah.
And just because he's a celebrity, there was no...
look at what happened between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. That whole relationship was a giant fiasco.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
And the amount of reports that had to be filed for both of them.
Yeah.
Just absolute tragedy. But,
and it's funny, at first things were like very much, everybody was seeing her as a victim, and then other things came out, and now it seems more like he was the victim.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Stories are...
I don't know who's
the
victim.
Going to change. In times when... In the times that we're living in right now with all the social media that we have, stories can change like that.
Yeah, on a dime.
They can change on a dime. But yeah, I do want to point out that when it comes to spousal abuse, years ago, husbands would just do unspeakable things to their wives, and wives would sometimes do unspeakable. But you never heard you rarely, if ever, heard about a woman
Yeah.
going after their husband unless it was to actually kill them.
Yeah.
Where we got
Yeah.
where we have soap operas, not soap operas, but shows like Cracked,
Mm-hmm.
where they go over just all kinds of spousal disputes.
There was, I don't know if you remember the movie. It was, I don't remember the name. It was Tracy Ullman and Kevin Kline, and it was based on a true story.
Okay.
Where she,
What a duo, Tracy
Yeah.
Ullman and Kevin Kline.
yeah, she wanted to kill the husband. I think because he was cheating on her.
Mhm.
You know, and she, I think she poisoned him. Tried to poison him,
Sounds
and
about right.
you know, he didn't die. He got very sick, didn't die, and wound up in the hospital. And he didn't. You know, he didn't, still, even after everything and, you know, finding out that she had really tried to poison him, didn't want to press charges. He was like, oh, he was like, you know what, well, I know she tried to poison me because she loves me so much. I forget what, we have to, look up
I'm gonna have to look
what that movie was, but it was like, but that's what you would have seen. Like, a wife just, you know, can't take the husband anymore, and tries to kill him. Or look at, and it was sort of a black comedy. But then on the more serious side, look at Farrah Fawcett in The Burning Bed, where she had been with, based on true story, the wife had, you know, been with the husband, and he had been abusing her for years. She even divorced him, but he you know, came back and would leave. You would call the police. They never did anything. And, you know, she just, you know, the police even came at one point. You know, she's got a black eye, bloody lip. And, you know, this man was beating her to death. And the police would not do anything. And then finally, she was like, she knew at one point, she was fighting for her life. If she didn't do something against him, he was going to kill her. And she set the bed on fire and killed him. And she was acquitted. But that's what started that whole movement that, you know, you can't turn a blind eye to domestic abuse.
No, you can't. And, you know, even with child abuse, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's any type of abuse should always be treated with dignity and respect. Even if it's, you know, the 15th time that you're getting a domestic abuse call from the same household, still treat it, because you never know what someone is you do not know what someone's breaking point is.
Right.
Unless you're a therapist or unless you're a social worker, you do not know the limits that people are willing to go to say, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was actually a friend of mine the other day. She was going on and on about her spouse just insulting her, making her feel small, belittling her. And we're all like, hey, wellness check, you good?
Yeah.
Like, do we need to contact your state's police department? Like, what's oh, it's fine, it's okay. And I'm like, okay, but...
Whoa.
And there was actually a friend of mine within that group hit me up, and she's like, I really want to go there. I'm like, listen, it's not up to us.
Right.
It's up to them.
Yeah.
And that I think is the hardest part about any type of abuse. It has to be up to the person that's being abused to say, I'm being abused.
Yeah.
We need to get out of this situation.
Yeah.
And it's very hard.
Yeah, because a lot of times if where you try to help somebody in like that situation, if they
you
don't
may
want to
end
be
up
helped,
doing more harm than good.
They may alienate you.
Yep.
Because they don't want you getting there. Like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. They
Denial.
love me.
It's
That
denial.
You don't understand and don't want. You know, I guess the hardest thing to do is you have to be supportive for the person without going so far that they want to excise you.
Yeah.
You have to let them know that you're there for them, I guess. I don't know. We're not therapists.
We're not therapists.
I'm not advocating.
We're not licensed.
I'm not advocating. I'm just saying.
All we can do.
I'm just saying the only thing really you can do is be a friend.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Is be supportive.
If they ask you for advice, you know, point them in the right direction. There are agencies that handle this type of thing, you know, for advice.
Yes.
So that's always best to consult a professional.
Always, please do consult a professional. As a matter of fact, when me and my cast from Maude Live, we were initially going to do the episode called The Convention.
Mm-hmm.
It's an episode where, it's a battle of the sexes type of episode. Mm-hmm. Walter and Maude go to one of Walter's Maytag conventions.
Right.
And Maude is given a button that says, "Hello, my name is Mrs. Walter Finley."
Uh-huh.
And she's like, "Why do I have to be Mrs. Walter Finley? Why can't you be Mr. Maude Finley?" Right. And again, battle of the sexes.
Yeah.
And they come home, and they come home. They come back to the motel after a. We'll definitely deal with this episode in depth, but the crux of why we didn't do that episode was in the final scene after Walter makes an absolute fool out of Maude while accepting his speech for whatever it was that he was getting an award for. Mm-hmm. Maude ends up saying... Walter ends up saying, "If you were a man, I'd punch you right in the nose."
Oh, yeah.
And Maude goes, "Well, why don't you? You're a man. You say that, are you a chicken or something?" And literally egging him on. Right. And we ended up just not doing it because most of us felt uncomfortable. Yeah, actually, no. All of us felt uncomfortable physically doing that type of scene.
Yeah.
And, it's true. And as a matter of fact, the reason I brought that up was because if we decided to do that scene, whatever donations we got from doing that, we would donate to a battered woman shelter.
Right.
Or donate it to an organization that helps battered women.
Right.
And or domestic abuse advisors. I think that's what they call it. It's domestic abuse, not battered women.
Yeah.
Just the changing of language changes so much. But yeah, that's what we decided just not to do it because it would have been too much. It would have been a lot.
Yeah.
It definitely would have been a lot.
That's heavy.
Again, that's part of Maude's charm. It's just there are a lot of episodes that are very, very heavily influenced by the relationship between men and women, and the relationship between husband and wife. Again, things that I love so much about the Norman Lear shows is that there is such a focus on the differentiations in relationships and how different types will interact with other different types. But
there you go.
The episode continues.
Yeah.
The episode continues with probably one of the finest transitions I've ever seen in an actress on television.
Right.
George ends up saying to Carol, as the fight is continuing to go on, I have it written down actually, how can two people argue like that?
Right.
And Carol stops and says, Carol jokes them and says, "It's easy, they love each other.
They love each other."
And she stops.
Yeah.
And the camera is literally focused on, and you just see her breathing change. You just see this sort of shift where she's like, "I get it."
The light bulb.
Yep, the light bulb
went off for her in that moment,
and it all made sense. Everything that her mother was telling her, everything that she'd heard, everything that Walter was trying to suggest, it all just clicked. And Carol ends up sending George home.
Yeah.
Carol ends up going into the kitchen she says the UN called for me to come in and count the bodies.
Yeah, because they've called a truce. Walter and Maude have called it a truce.
They could rent us out.
Well, she wants a truce. She tells him no, it's surrender.
Yes.
She insists on a surrender.
I think she said a demolition company could hire us to destroy something. She said something to that effect.
Yes. And Walter, he says something about it's like that movie,
Morally Safer.
Love means never having to say you're sorry. He's talking about a love story, and Maude mentioned something about love is having to eat tuna off of paper plates.
Love is having to eat tuna.
They have no dishes left.
Yeah, they have no dishes left. And I
think that's when it was after that
it was
Carol
right after that Carol
came in
to count the bodies.
And you can see she's just a little distraught, and gives them she's thanking them both. She gives them both a kiss.
Yeah, and you hear the lilt in her voice,
and she tells them that George
left, and I mean, she didn't want to talk about it.
Right.
She did not want to talk about it.
Right.
She was just like, let me go upstairs, put Philip to bed. Let me go to bed. We'll discuss it tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Because I mean, after something like that, you don't want to, especially after seeing your mother and your stepfather literally destroying everything in the house.
It kind of reminds me of my friend.
And she also said that Carol, I think, was telling George they've argued like this before. Maude ended up cutting Walter's trousers at the knee, and he did something of equal disaster to Maude. And again, it further proves that domestic disputes need to be handled by somebody, not. I'm trying to think of what to say.
Yeah.
Not where they're handling them on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be handled by a professional.
Yeah, it made me think though this whole episode because Maude brought up to Carol about settling, and I had a friend who I forget her exact precise way she worded it, but it had to do with when you accept less than you deserve, you basically wind up with even less than you thought you were going to get.
It's true.
She had a better way of stating it, but I completely agree with that.
In terms, what does it mean to you to settle?
To settle, well, it means you're going to accept a situation that you're truly not happy with, and it's sort of like you have to weigh it. Is this something that I can deal with? I'm not happy about, this per se, but it's not completely a deal breaker.
No.
I think it's kind of a cruel compromise. I think settling would be a cruel compromise. Whereas, a true compromise is, you're going to accept something and it's maybe some just little things about it. You're not totally crazy. Like, oh, those curtains, they're not quite what I like, but I can live with them. That's a compromise.
There's compromising.
And then there's compromising.
And then there's compromising.
Yes, and I think settling is, and then there's compromising.
Yeah.
That's, to me, is what settling. Especially in Carol's situation. She was selling herself short.
Very much so.
See, Maude...
But, I mean, also, take into consideration that Carol is a young 27-year-old.
Yeah.
She's not being turned down by jobs. She's just being met with these gross men,
right,
who want to take advantage of her.
Yeah.
Not only as just an object, she's seeing herself being treated as an object. Mm-hmm. She's seeing herself being put down. She's seeing herself being chased by these lecherous men.
Right.
And it weighs heavily on a person's psyche.
Sure.
So she's already feeling down about herself, and Maude is just railing against this idea that Carol is less than.
Yes. Maude wanted Carol to have it all.
Yes.
I believe,
as any mother would.
If Carol had said to Maude, yeah, I'm head over heels in love with George, Maude probably would have been like, I gotta get on the phone to the caterer.
Yeah, I have to call the caterer. I have to get the DJ. We have to get florists and all that fun stuff.
Walter!
Yeah.
It would have been like, she would have been gung-ho, let's get Carol married.
Yeah.
If Carol had said to her, I realize I'm head over heels in love with George, and I want to spend the rest of it. Maude would have been happy because then Carol would have been getting everything. But for Carol to be like, I'm fond of him. I think those were her words.
Yeah.
She was
I respect him very much. I like him very
him.
much, and I think that she even said, "I think we can make it on that."
Yeah.
And Maude, being Maude, was like, no, I don't think you can.
Right.
And I mean, that really is... I don't see a lot of that happening today.
No.
But...
It was quite
I'm pretty sure that was probably
Prevalent.
a thing that happened years
Years
ago.
ago, yeah.
And you know, I can with some of the men that I have met, I can definitely say that they got married too early. Because some of the men that I have familiarized myself with in an intimate way, they...
Is this when you meet on the app for grinding stones? Or polishing stones?
Absolute azure But no, when I've met these gentlemen, and I use the term loosely, they all tell me, like, I wasn't able to do it when I was younger. I wasn't able to experiment or experience this when I was younger. And I'm like, that's so sad.
Yeah.
That's so sad. That you were not able to experience and live your most authentic life. That you had to settle.
Yeah.
That you had to just accept your fate, not challenge it, because if you did challenge it, you would face ostracization. You would be ostracized. You would be cut out of the will. You would be just all of these bad things would befall you.
You could find yourself out of a job.
And you could find yourself out
homeless.
Yup. These are all things that have happened. And some of these guys that I've met, some of them aren't that much older than I am. Some of them are in their 40s, some of them are in their late 30s. And I'm like, how do you as an individual let yourself get to that point where you have to say, this is who I have to accept. Not who I have to be, but this is who I have to learn to accept. This is who I have to settle in myself with. It's very, very, very sad.
Yeah, it is.
It's very sad. I am so grateful that, despite all that I have overcome, that I am still able to live as an out proud, gay, queer individual.
Wait, you're gay?
I had no idea.
Oh my goodness!
You didn't know?
I didn't know.
Tragically sorry. I tell you, I was shocked as hell when you told me that you were not only married, but that you had 3 kids.
Yeah.
I was shocked as all hell.
I know, right? Shocking to me as well sometimes. I know.
But I mean, that is the reality that we see some people face. And I mean, in Carol's, I'm not exactly equating what Carol is going through to the men that I have seen. But the parallels are there. The parallels are definitely there, and it's sad. Yeah. So I commiserate with what Carol is going through, but I also think that Maude was certainly correct in her saying, "Don't sell yourself short."
Right.
And I feel like Maude was she wasn't as overbearing of a mother as she's been in previous episodes, because in this instance she was right.
Yeah. In
this instance, I truly feel that Maude was very much correct in how she was presenting not only her case, but in being a mother to Carol.
Yeah.
She was very correct in what she was doing and how she was doing it.
Definitely.
So Carol goes upstairs, and then I think I think Maude and Walter exchange a few pleasantries.
Right.
And then it cuts to the epilogue. It cuts to the next morning, where Walter is all smiles, and he's making a big breakfast, just singing Love is Lovelier the second time around, and Bill Macy does not know how to carry a note.
No.
Like, at all.
No.
I don't know how Norman Lear convinced Bill Macy to sing any of the songs, because Bill Macy just could not sing. Just could not sing. Bless his loving heart, he tried. He tried very hard. And then, Maude comes downstairs and she's like, "Wait, you're making breakfast? Like, what's the deal?" And, Walter goes, I forget, like, what Walter said specifically, but he was, like, going on saying, I honestly have no idea what the hell he said. But he obviously said it all last night, because that was Maude's closing line.
Yes,
you said it all last night. Which means that after the 4 days of no kissing, no touching, no holding, they finally had love.
Yes.
They did make the whooping.
Yes. So you can actually sort of see that whole kitchen episode, the breaking of everything, as the sexual frustration
Yes.
that they were both experiencing too.
I think when they were, was it wet the drinking water, dear?
Pardon.
When
Pardon me, frog in my throat.
when they, and I think it was either before or after they started arguing that Walter and Maude embraced. And then I think Maude turned to Walter and Walter said to Maude, "I think this is the first time I've had you in my arms in 4 days."
Right.
And I think Maude said, "It's a case of too little, too late."
Too late, yeah.
But one of the last things that we want to touch on is Maude and Walter's relationship was very much a product of the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
They did love each other very much, but that didn't mean that they were void of their problems.
Right.
And again, we want to make something very clear that spousal abuse does not equate love.
No.
If your spouse is abusing you, if your spouse is treating you unkindly, if you feel that your friends are getting a little too involved in your marital affairs, do a wellness check with yourself.
Yes.
Contact. There are hotlines available there. And there was actually a very good friend of mine who suffered a lot of abuse from his girlfriend.
Oh.
Whom I was like, get everything recorded, get everything sent to police officers. Just make sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Oh.
And again, do these wellness checks.
Mm.
Reach out to friends. Reach out. There is help available to you.
Mm.
We here at God Will Get You for That, Walter, support victims.
Yes. Always.
And it is definitely important to just do wellness checks on yourself and on your significant other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we can say on the matter.
Yeah.
We thank you for joining
do.
us on another episode of God Will Get You for That, Walter. If you would like to follow me, you can on all forms of social media at ThatTomcat. I have my own website, thattomcat.com. And if you would like to follow my beautiful co-star, you can at
ToniHomeperm.com. And of course, that's Tony with an I.
I love when you say that. I love so much when you say that. One day you will have a one-woman show called Tony with an I.
Of course I will. And of course, you can always check God Will Get You for That, Walter out on Facebook
and Instagram.
Instagram at
Finley's Friendly Appliances. And if you would like to reach out to us personally, to send us fan mail, to send us comments, questions, concerns, you can at Finley's Friendly Appliances at gmail.com.
Ooh. It's so neat that we have all these little
all these little products, all these products,
thingamajigs and thingamabobs.
But we will see you, friends, next week on another episode of.
Well, they won't see us; they'll hear us.
Every time you say that, I want to smack you. You will hear us on another episode of
God Will Get You for That, Walter. Good night.
Goodbye.